Good morning students. Today I am going to discuss about basal ganglia, a very important CNS topic. It's an expected university essay question and I will be today dealing with connections of basal ganglia. It's a little bit tough but I will try to make it as simple as possible. So before going to connections, so these are the components of basal ganglia. Caudate nucleus, otherwise there are the various nucleus which are present of basal ganglia. Caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus which is divided into globus pallidus externa, globus pallidus interna, subthalamic nucleus and substantia nigra. Substantia nigra is again divided into pars compacta, pars reticularis. I am not going into anatomy where it is located. So caudate nucleus and putamen together is called as corpus striatum. So these are the various nuclei of basal ganglia. So keep it as such. The main functions of basal ganglia are planning and programming of movements. So planning and programming of movements. Cerebellum function is coordination of movements. For example, if you are doing a movement which is going beyond the limit, to bring it back, that is cerebellum. Whereas this is even for initiation of movements, very very important. Inhibition of movements and modification of movements. I am trying to make it simple. So the functions of basal ganglia, main function is planning and programming of movements, which can be divided into initiation of movement, inhibition of movement, modification of movements. So for this initiation of movement, I will be explaining direct pathway, which may be involving some of these nuclei, that is otherwise connections. Inhibition of movement, indirect pathway. Again I will explain that, don't worry. And modification of movement, nigro striatal pathway. So as the name suggests, some connections between substantia nigra and corpus striatum. It's very important because if the pathway is affected, there is a condition called Parkinson's disease. So now we will go to the connections of basal ganglia based upon this. So when I discuss the connections of basal ganglia, I will discuss that direct pathway, what are the connections and how it helps in initiation of movements. Indirect pathway, what are the connections and how it helps in inhibition of movement. Nigrostriatal pathway, what are the connections and how it helps in modifying the movements or amplification of movements, whatever it is. Now I will go to the connections, which is the main important topic of today's discussion. So now I will be discussing about direct pathway, which helps in initiation of movement. When I explain finishing these connections, you will understand how it helps in initiation of movement or increasing the signals to the motor cortex. So from the cortex, you can see here, the signals are coming to the caudate nucleus and putamen, which will be secreting glutamate, which is excitatory, so plus. So remember, all green colors are excitatory, plus. All red colors are inhibitory, minus, that is GABA. So see here, the output or the rest, the cortex is sending signals to the caudate nucleus and putamen, and it is excitatory. Or the cortex is sending glutamate, which is the excitatory neurotransmitter, to the caudate nucleus and putamen. So now what happens? The caudate nucleus and putamen now, which is corpus striatum, is happy because they are getting stimulated from the cortex. So this is plus increased firing. So the function of this caudate nucleus and putamen is inhibiting this globus pallidus interna. See here, the red color. Red color means inhibition. So what the caudate nucleus and putamen does? You just answer yourself. That will inhibit this globus pallidus interna. So what is the function of this caudate nucleus and putamen, or the outcome? It is inhibiting the globus pallidus interna. So this is expected to inhibit this. So now as of now discussion, the globus pallidus interna is inhibited. Why this is inhibited? That is the function of this caudate nucleus and putamen. And how this caudate nucleus and putamen is stimulated? From the cortex. So cortex plus stimulates the caudate nucleus and putamen. This inhibits the globus pallidus interna. So now as of now, this is inhibited. What is the function of this globus pallidus interna? Or what the connection does? This is sending again GABA, which is minus. Again it is sending the inhibited neurotransmitter to thalamus. Now you tell me the state of thalamus. That is the very important thing. So you have to answer whether the thalamus is excitatory or inhibitory. Yeah, so this is inhibiting the thalamus. So this should inhibit thalamus. Again, concentrate there, very important. The globus pallida interna job is to inhibit the thalamus. Thalamus means ventromedial and lateral nucleus of thalamus. Whenever I discuss about basal ganglia, the thalamic nucleus involved is anterior nucleus or antroventral nucleus and the lateral nucleus of thalamus. So this should be inhibited. Why? That is the function of this. But globus pallidus interna, what's happening? That is inhibited by corpus striatum. So see here, this is inhibited. So whether this will happen or not, this will not happen. Or you remember simple 2 red lines. So 2 minus, which becomes plus. So this will be stimulated. And this, once this nucleus is stimulated, here there is increased firing, which is in the form of glutamate. So the cortex is stimulated. And maybe that may result in initiation. So this is a circuit. I again repeat. The cortex stimulates the caudate nucleus and putamen. So the caudate nucleus and putamen, that is corpus striatum, is happy. The function of this corpus striatum actually is, I am telling about direct pathway. So this will inhibit the globus pallida into. So this is inhibited. The actual function of this interna is to inhibit the ventromedial and lateral nucleus of thalamus. That has to be inhibited. But this is already inhibited. That this is inhibited. So this is not happening. This GABA discharge is not happening. Very, very important. So what happens? This is not happening. So red color is not coming. Otherwise, the inhibition is not coming to the thalamus. So thalamus will be happy. It is excited, and one more output from the thalamus is to the cortex and the glutamate. This is increased. So this will also be increased, and this also is increased, which helps in initiation of movement. That's how the basal ganglia, one of the function is planning and programming of movements, and I explained one of the action, that is initiation of movements. Now I will discuss about indirect pathway. We will be discussing about indirect pathway. If you compare this diagram and this diagram, you can see 2 nucleus have been added extra, that is subthalamic nucleus and globus pallidus external. In the previous direct pathway, the corpus striatum directly sends signals to the interna. But now we will concentrate here. Just concentrate. As usual, from the cortex, the glutamate is coming, or the signals which come are excitatory. This is excitatory plus. So this is stimulated happy, and as usual this is sending inhibitory signals. But here in indirect pathway it is going to externa. So globus pallidus externa. So what is the status of globus pallidus externa? It is inhibited. So this is inhibited. What actually globus pallidus externa does? It also inhibits the subthalamic nucleus. So this is expected to inhibit this. Again, concentrate. The globus pallidus externa is expected to inhibit the subthalamic nucleus, but it itself is inhibited. Again, I repeat. Globus pallidus externa. If they ask what is the function of globus pallidus externa, it has to send inhibitory signals, that is GABA, to subthalamic nucleus. So it should be inhibited because of this globus pallidus externa. But what is happening to globus pallidus externa? That itself is inhibited. See here, the caudate nucleus and putamen are sending GABA. So this is inhibited. I have marked this is inhibited. So this function will not happen. Again, this function will not happen because this is inhibited. So what happens? Tick. I will put in green color so that you can understand. So this is stimulated. So as of now, in indirect pathway, subthalamic nucleus is stimulated. Why subthalamic nucleus is stimulated? This globus pallidus externa, which is expected to inhibit, is itself inhibited. Why this is inhibited? Because of caudate nucleus and putamen. How caudate nucleus and putamen does this function? Because of the cortex. So now, I have put tick plus. Now see the function of subthalamic nucleus. It carries glutamate. So this carries glutamate to the globus pallidus interna. So now this is stimulated. So globus pallidus interna, here it is stimulated. Compare the direct pathway. Here the globus pallidus interna is inhibited. In indirect pathway, the thalamus is inhibited. Here, GABA, this is inhibited because the globus pallidus interna is stimulated from subthalamic nucleus. So the plus you can see here. So subthalamic nucleus is stimulated, which stimulates the globus pallidus interna, which inhibits the thalamus. So what happens here? There is decrease, and the cortex there is decreased, and there is inhibition. So why the thalamus is decreasing the signals? Because the thalamus is inhibited by globus pallidus interna, which is active. Now this is indirect pathway which causes inhibition. Now compare this diagram with this diagram. See here. Here the globus pallidus interna is inhibited. See here into. Here the globus pallidus interna is excited. So remaining you can understand. So what is the function of globus pallidus interna? It is expected to decrease the thalamus, inhibit thalamus, but this itself is inhibited, so this will not happen. Or there is decrease in GABA discharge. So there is decrease in GABA discharge. So this will be activated. The inhibition of this interna is not happening. I already explained, not happening. So more firing. So in direct pathway, there is more firing from the anterior ventral medial nucleus of thalamus. In indirect pathway, there is less firing. Simple. So indirect pathway, less firing, less discharge. In direct pathway, more firing. So this is for facilitating the movements. This is for inhibiting the movements. So now the question arises. Yes, direct pathway facilitates movement. So if I want to flex my hand or wrist, okay, if I want to flex my wrist, so for flexing of the wrist, the direct pathway is involved. But to prevent the flexion of wrist, indirect pathway is involved. So how to know that if I may flex my wrist, only the direct pathway is going to come to play and indirect pathway will be inhibited. For example, if I want to do this movement, for facilitating this movement, this connection has to take place. If this connection takes place for this movement, I will not be able to flex. Or there should be a balance between direct and indirect pathway. So why I am telling this question is, here comes the role of another pathway which I was discussing, nigrostriatal pathway, the third pathway. Nigrostriatal pathway. So as the name suggests, from substantia nigra. This is substantia nigra, which is divided into pars compacta and pars reticularis. So from substantia nigra to corpus striatum plus usually dopamine. So I have drawn it here itself. Actually I have to draw separately. Again I will draw, no problem. From substantia nigra to corpus striatum. So dopamine plus. So this is nigrostriatal pathway, and what it does is it modulates. So let this be third. This is first. Direct pathway is first. Indirect pathway is second. Nigrostriatal pathway is third. And nigrostriatal pathway is very important because that is the one which is modulating. As I was telling, for making one movement, this connection also may act. This connection also may act. This connection will help in moving. For example, you understand, for elbow flexion, the direct cortex, the direct pathway will help in elbow flexion. At the same time, indirect pathway through the extra two nucleus like subthalamic nucleus and globus pallidus externa may inhibit that. But I want to flex. So there comes the role of this nigrostriatal pathway, which will decide that it has to be flexed. So you can see here. So what happens? This is dopamine. So this is also, I will put it in green color. So this is also plus, this is also plus. So in direct pathway, only this cortex to corpus striatum was there, whereas in nigrostriatal pathway, from cortex to striatum is also there, from substantia nigra to corpus striatum, dopamine, especially from pars compacta is also there. So this both, when comes together, this becomes more active. So this is nigrostriatal pathway. So this is direct pathway. This is nigrostriatal pathway. Why nigrostriatal pathway more is because of extra dopamine, which also stimulates caudate nucleus and putamen. And further, from striatum, the There goes inhibitory to pars reticularis. This is from pars compacta. I will put in green color. This is from pars compacta. So what happens? This is dopamine is D1. I have charts on D1 receptors. So again repeat, from pars compacta, the dopaminergic fibers which goes acts on D1 receptors in the corpus striatum and which is positive, glutamate. From corpus striatum, some inhibitory fibers goes to the pars reticularis, which is basal ganglia is mainly involved in planning and programming of movements. The planning and programming of movements involves initiation, inhibition and modulation. Initiation is done by direct pathway, inhibition is done by indirect pathway, modulation is done by nigrostriatal pathway. Initiation, I explained. Simply remember, all the outputs mostly are inhibitory except the one coming from the cortex and the one coming from the thalamus. Within the basal ganglia, almost all are inhibitory. I again repeat, the output coming from the cortex is excitatory, the one going from the thalamus is excitatory. But within the basal ganglia, from corpus striatum to globus pallidus, interna or externa, from interna to thalamus, all those are inhibitory. Only excitatory within the basal ganglia connections is subthalamic nucleus. You can see here. The subthalamic nucleus stimulates interna, but again globus pallidus interna will inhibit the thalamus. So here comes the applied aspects which I will be explaining in next class. As of now, understanding, so see here. If imagine this is affected because of some problem, the direct pathway, I will write it here. So direct pathway problem. So what happens? Initiation of movements is difficult. Our movement will be very, very less. That is called hypokinesia. Imagine indirect pathway is affected, some problem. So what will happen? The inhibition is not going to happen or the control is not there. So there may be hyperkinesia. Now coming to nigrostriatal pathway, which maintains the balance between direct and indirect, or when you want to flex, that particular joint will be flexed, the opposite joint will be extended or it will go in opposite direction. That is done. If there is something problem here, one disease which I commonly get because of this nigrostriatal pathway is Parkinsonism. So Parkinsonism is a condition where there is difficulty in modulating. So there will be like pill rolling movements. So I will explain it in separate class, but understand Parkinsonism is a disorder of nigrostriatal pathway, or Parkinsonism in general is a disorder of basal ganglia connections. I have told the basic mechanism how to understand. I hope, even though it is little bit difficult, if you see it some 2 times, it may be easy to understand. You have to just concentrate that minus, plus, glutamate, GABA, all those things. Now exam point of view, usually they may ask what are the afferents and what are the efferents. So from the diagram, how I will be dividing is basal ganglia, afferents and efferents. I will divide like from corpus striatum, from subthalamic, from globus pallidus, from subthalamic nucleus, from substantia nigra. So all these are components of basal ganglia. What are the afferents coming to this? What are the afferents going out of this? So this will be the afferents and efferents of basal ganglia like this. So for the corpus striatum, what are the afferents? Efferents. For the globus pallidus, externa, interna, afferents, substantia like this. So for this, let us see. See here, from the diagram, you can tabulate this easily from the diagram. So for the corpus striatum, the afferents are from cortex. From striatum, the efferents are, it is going to globus pallidus. It is also going to substantia nigra. For globus pallidus, the afferents are caudate nucleus and putamen. Concentrate this for globus pallidus. So these are the afferent, and efferent is going to thalamus and also subthalamic nucleus in indirect pathway. Subthalamic nucleus, for subthalamic nucleus, this is subthalamic nucleus in indirect pathway. The afferent was coming from cardiac nucleus and putamen, and the efferent was going to globus pallidus internal. For substantia nigra, again you can see corpus striatum and globus pallidus, corpus striatum and globus pallidus, substantia nigra. So like this, you can make afferents and efferents of basal ganglia connections. Very important thing, there is no direct output from the basal ganglia to the cortex. The only thing is thalamus. You can see here, very important. So all the internuclear connections of the basal ganglia will end up in thalamus. There is no direct connection to the cortex. From the thalamus only, the projections are coming to the cortex. Yeah, this is possible. From the thalamus to corpus striatum, we call this as thalamostriate. This is possible, but this is not possible. Cardiac nucleus putamen has to go via the connections and ends up in thalamus. So no direct output from the cardiac nucleus and putamen or from the globus pallidus to the cortex. It is going via the thalamus and from the thalamus to the cortex. That is very important. We discussed about afferent and efferent connections of basal ganglia. Now one more theory point of view. Textbooks are given. Another point, that is two circuits, putamen circuit and caudate circuit. The main thing, the putamen circuit receives from the motor cortex itself, and the circuit output via the thalamus, that also goes to the motor cortex. Whereas in caudate circuits, there is no direct input from the motor cortex. It is from associated areas. Very important. So putamen is directly from motor cortex, caudate circuit is from associated areas input. And via the putamen circuit, it will be giving to maybe prefrontal area, premotor area, supplementary motor area, or no direct projection to motor area. This is circuit, remember, don't confuse with caudate nucleus and putamen, because just now I told it everything has to go only via thalamus. That is the caudate nucleus putamen. This is the entire circuit. So no direct to the motor cortex. It is only to the supplementary motor area. That you have to understand. And function of this putamen circuit is mainly associated with movements like writing alphabets, numbering, writing the numbers, or cutting the paper with scissors. This putamen circuit is concerned with complex movements like writing alphabets, writing numbers, cutting the paper with scissors, so on the example, all the main complex movements. Whereas this caudate circuit is concerned with cognitive knowledge. Thinking. So this caudate nucleus is considered with, rather than directly movements, it is like cognitive knowledge about what to do, like thinking. For example, if I see a snake, I decide to move. Those type of thinking is coming from the caudate circuit. Moving, running, starting, that is coming from putamen circuit. So I hope I gave a little bit brief on connections of basal ganglia, about direct pathway, indirect pathway, nigrostriatal pathway, how direct pathway initiates the movement or facilitates the movement, how indirect pathway inhibits the movement, how nigrostriatal pathway modulates the movements between direct and indirect, and also the afferent and efferent connections. Finally, I touched upon the two circuits, putamen circuit and caudate circuit. In next class, I will discuss about applied aspects, especially all the diseases associated with lesion of this nuclei of the basal ganglia. And one of the important applied aspects is Parkinsonism, and we will discuss in detail in the next class, treatment for Parkinsonism, all those things. This part will be a little bit difficult, so you have to concentrate and read. So thank you. We will see you in next class.